everybody. Welcome to Bibletime. Matthew chapter 26, Gospel of Matthew, all about Jesus' life. Right here in this section, these last 7-8 chapters or so are all about actually the final week of his life. It's called the Passion Week. We're right here in the middle of it. He is about to eat his last meal with his disciples, and then he's going to go out knowing that he's about to be arrested. So that's where we're at. If you're new to these videos, thanks for joining. If you want to stay up to date, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and it'll let you know every time that a video drops. But yeah, my goal is to just help people read the Bible daily and grow in their relationship with Jesus, their affection for him, their love for him, not out of religiosity, but out of relationship. So that being said, let's read the Bible today, not just to study, not just to check off a to-do list, but to say, God, what does your heart want to say to me, and how would you want to invite me to change my life in response to it? So, with that, let's jump into verse 17. It says, Now on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, Where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover? And he said, Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, The teacher says, My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus directed them, and they prepared the Passover. When it was evening, he reclined at the table with the 12, and as they were eating, he said, Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me. I always find this to be such an interesting part. Why? Yeah, I don't know. Just why did he, even if he knew, why did he call it out? What's the strategic purpose there? It's just I don't know. I guess you would think that him saying one of you is going to betray me would actually deter Judas from doing it, because he's like, oh my gosh, I've already been caught. But it didn't. So was it because then we can look back on it and be like, see, he knew it was going to happen? I don't know. He already has told us that he's going to die. I'm going to be crucified. So, I don't know. It's just interesting to me. Why would he do that? And they were very sorrowful and began to say to him one after another, Is it I, Lord? He answered, He who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to the man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It will be better for that man if he had not been born. Judas, who would betray him, answered, Is it I, Rabbi? And he said, You have said so. Dude, that's crazy. It's either Judas was faking it and saying that in front of them. I don't know. I don't get it, because Judas obviously planned to do it outwardly, not hidden. He showed up. He knew that they'd all be there. He showed up with the guards. It was clearly him. He's the one that kissed Jesus. There was no whispering to them and pretending like it wasn't you because you're with Jesus, but you actually are the one that sold him out. He literally showed up with the guards. So he totally planned on doing it in public, everybody to see. And so for here, one potential, why would he ask this question would be to save face in everybody else, in front of everybody, and pretend like it's not him, but that's obviously wasn't his plan. And so, I don't know, it just kind of makes me wonder if, like, maybe there just was this cognitive dissonance in him that's like, he had already talked to the guys saying, what will you pay me to turn him over to you? He already knew, he already had a plan. But maybe in this moment he's thinking, I don't know if it's really going to be me. And he's like asking, you know, do you think it's me, Jesus? When he had already made the plan? Like, is he deceiving himself to think that, I don't know. The whole thing's weird. The whole thing sucks and stupid, but at the same time, what's most weird about it, I suppose, is that we're like mad at Judas. He did the stupidest thing ever. And yet at the same time, the death needed to happen. So it's kind of like, well, it led to what was necessary for humanity. The crucifixion was a good thing at the same time of being a horrible thing. But end of the day, I don't think that it required Judas turning Jesus over to actually happen. Like, they would have seen him eventually. He was out in public. They could have arrested him at some other time. It didn't require one of his disciples handing him over. And so this idea of betrayal and that it was necessary for Judas to do that, I don't know. As in, like, was he made to do it? Was he bound to it? Did he have to do it? Was his free will taken away from him? I don't know. I tend to not believe that, but he operated within his will, wanted money, probably was displeased with this Messiah that Jesus was turning out to be, and he did what he did. So I don't know. I guess end of the day, what kind of questions are we asking ourselves in response to this? Like, again, like yesterday, to ask the question, is there ever anything that I'm willing to trade to betray my Jesus? And I hope the answer is no. Number 2, is there any way that we're deceived? Like, is there any way that maybe in the back of our head we know that we're not honoring him, and yet we're still kind of like, well, it's not me, right? Like, is there anything that we're giving ourselves over to that's not honoring and submitting to and submissive to and loving of our King? And I think later we'll probably talk about the difference between Peter's betrayal and Judas's betrayal, and then each of their response and what we can learn from that. Now, as they were eating, Jesus took the bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, gave it to his disciples, and said, "Take, eat. This is my body." And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink again of this fruit of the vine until when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom." So let's look at a few of these pieces here. So he takes bread and he relates it with his body, and he takes a cup of wine, relates it with his blood, and he mentions a specific covenant. And so there's like so much layer to this. Number one, at the Passover meal, the use of bread and wine is used in a few different ways, and it's just super interesting, all of it. Like, there's this little compartment there's this little like basket with 3 compartments, and there's bread in it, and then the middle piece of bread is taken and hidden in the house somewhere, and the kids are supposed to find it, and when they find it, they bring it back, and the father says, "Oh, you've redeemed it," like you've found the bread. and it's the middle piece out of 3, and so Jesus is the middle on the cross. And then at the Passover meal, there's 4 cups of wine, and they happen at different times in the meal. And the 3rd cup happens after the meal, and that's a cup that represents the atonement and all that God did in providing for the children of Israel as they left Egypt, which is where the Passover meal comes from, is when God came in and killed the firstborn in Egypt and delivered his people, and everybody who had the blood on their doorframe, the death angel passed over their house, and that specific cup represented a specific thing. And another one of the Gospels says the cup that Jesus talks about here was the cup after the meal. And so much. In another passage, he says, unless you drink of my blood and eat of my body, you have no place with me. And so, like, this is a very mystical thing. You know, even the Catholics believe, like, that when they eat the bread and drink the wine right now today, that it literally transforms into Jesus' flesh and blood. We don't believe that. We don't believe that it, like, literally becomes flesh and blood, but we believe that it's something that we do to remember what Jesus did. But there's also something very mystical, and like that God dispenses grace in this, and that there's something deeply significant about receiving communion as they received it. In the other Gospels, it says, for as often as you drink of this blood or drink of this juice and eat of this bread, you remember me. And then when Paul talks about communion in Corinthians, he says, you know, when we eat this and drink this, we proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. And there's this participation in it, and there's this weight to it, because Paul says, like, we must discern the difference between the bread and the juice, the body and the blood, and we must also discern our own hearts and see if there's anything that's between us and God as far as sin is concerned. And so, man, there's something really to this, but ultimately the biggest part of this is that what the bread representing his body and the juice representing his blood both represent what he's about to do on the cross, to break his body for us and to shed his blood for us, which is completely tied to the covenant system. It's Jesus is fulfilling the covenant agreement that God has with man, this sacrificial system of sin requires blood for forgiveness. And so Jesus is fulfilling a covenant and beginning a new covenant all at the same time. And the new covenant, the new legal agreement between God and man, is that we are right and restored in relationship with him if we are found in Christ, if we find ourselves in faith in regards to what he did for us on the cross, represented right here in the bread and the juice. And so when you take communion, it's not just some tradition, something that you just do. It's something deeply meaningful, and we should remember Jesus. We should honor him and worship him for what he did. We should remember that he felt the pain in his body. He was broken for us, that he poured out his blood for our forgiveness. We should remember all those things, and we should worship him in and through it. And ultimately, we should receive this new covenant that we are saved by grace through faith. So there's a lot there, but I guess there's so much that we can like take for just for today, but maybe especially this is something to sort of grab onto next time you're in church, or even with your family and you're doing communion. Maybe you should actually, the application is do communion with your family or with some friends today or this week, and remember the deep significance of this and honor Jesus for it. So yeah, that's my thoughts for today. That's probably good for today. Maybe we'll pick up again, or we will pick up again tomorrow, but instead of keeping going today. So we'll pick up again tomorrow in verse 30. But I want to encourage you to consider the deep significance of the practice of communion and how it applies to your life, and how God is meeting you in that place, and you are in the family of this covenant through your faith and through this practice. So it's a pretty cool thing. There's actually tons more details that are totally worthy to be studied. But anyway, if you want to learn more, I did a Good Friday message all about communion and Passover just this last Easter. So you can find that on Heart of the City Church's YouTube page if you are somebody that wants a little bit more of that. It was a really great conversation that I had with another leader. So anyway, there's that. Thanks for joining today. I'll see you again tomorrow. God bless.